Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on the Positive Tip podcast, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith, mostly sports today. Kenny, if you are David Ross and you started this week as manager of the Chicago Cubs, how are you feeling right now?
I'm just wondering what I did wrong.
I I know he's improved that team every year. We got to talk about and Craig Counsell is now the highest paid manager in all of baseball. How do you feel about that?
Which I think a little bit of that is like slightly overrated. I kind of get it, but also it's interesting how highly coveted he was.
Yeah, it really is. He's a good manager, but we'll talk. We'll talk about it. And the Mets lost out on him, and we've got Carlos Mendoza. I had not heard of him. I think I did. I think I heard of him this year because I think he was involved in that whole Toronto Blue Jays nonsense that they had earlier this year. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll get into the NFL as we're really now into the second half and see who the best teams are. And what would you say is one word you could describe your Giants right now?
Tank.
Okay. All right, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Michigan. We'll talk about the Knicks and some of the NBA stuff. You ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
All right.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
No. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, lots to get into today. Man, oh man, what a week it has already been. Let's start out with Monday and the manager carousels. Now there's more openings around baseball than I thought. Originally at first. You still got openings with the Angels now, the Brewers, the Astros, the Mets filled it, the Cubs filled it, but that was the shocker on Monday. Craig Counsell, you texted me. I was like, what? David Ross is out with the Cubs? He had been one of the rising managers, I thought, did a great job with that team. Craig Counsell goes there and he becomes the highest paid manager. So what was some of your thoughts? And I mean, how should David Ross feel right now?
I don't know. If I'm David Ross, I'm really annoyed because, like, I don't think there's anything that he could have done to, like, deserve to get fired.
Yeah.
I mean, like you had said before, this team improved every single year. Also, like, let's be honest, do they have an amazing roster? No.
No.
This isn't the 2016 Cubs. And I thought like he worked really well with the young players. It seemed like they were really developing a thing. I don't know if it's just the idea of, I'm going to give a football comparison here. Baker Mayfield was fine, but Deshaun Watson can be better. So let's get rid of the old guy for the new guy.
It's a good comparison. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think maybe that's what happened. And I hope for like the Cubs fans' sake that they do improve. Also, like, I don't know, it just kind of seems like I don't fully understand why Craig Counsell is like the highly sought after manager. The Guardians had interviewed him. They obviously went with Stephen Vogt instead, which is, we could talk about that at another time. The Mets obviously interviewed him, but then not only does he not want to stay in Milwaukee, where they have great pitching and they've got a pretty decent roster, but he's going to a little bit more of an unknown. Just very interesting.
Yeah, it is. He said, and he spoke out for the first time, I think yesterday, said that he was just looking for a different challenge in his career. It had come out during that. It wasn't a surefire thing. I think and I think I texted you Sunday that I'm 90% sure he's going to the Mets because of his connection with now David Stearns, who's, high in charge of the Mets. And they worked together for so long in Milwaukee. But then it was starting to come out that he really didn't want to move far away. And I totally get that. I think, if that's one of his reasons, which he said it was, because I guess Chicago and Milwaukee are not that far apart. What, a 2-3 hour drive, I believe, is what he
Yeah,
said.
that makes sense.
So and yeah, I mean, listen though, but if you get the Brewers into the World Series, they haven't been in the World Series since 1982. So that would be a huge accomplishment. I mean, he got them in the playoffs almost every year he was there, but maybe he's thinking it will be a little bit more. I don't know. I hate to use the word glamorous because he doesn't seem like a glamorous type of guy that he worries about that, but it probably is more glamorous. You get the Cubs back into the World Series, I would imagine. It's just a head scratcher, especially I would have held on to a David Ross, and it's so unfair to him because now, a lot of these teams are well down the road on who they're probably going to pick for a manager. And I would imagine no shot on Carlos Mendoza because everything I'm reading, like from John Heyman and people that you and I really trust and read, they think Mendoza is going to be an excellent manager, that he has all of the qualifications. But I think the Mets would have considered a guy like David Ross had he been, out there on the market, or people would have known. It's just a
Yeah,
weird thing.
or the Guardians too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because like it does seem like a lot of people like Stephen Vogt, and I think he's going to be a good manager.
Yeah, yeah.
But like replacing Terry Francona is a huge task.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I had mentioned to you, David Ross, maybe he looks at possibly Houston, although I think a name that's popped up for Houston that seems like it makes a lot of sense is Ron Washington.
Right. Right.
So I don't know if that would happen, but I don't know. It's bizarre all around.
It really is. And Ron Washington, I think, deserves another shot. I don't know why it's taken him so long. I mean, the only thing he did was get the team 2 straight World Series, and I know he's had some off the field stuff, but I would have thought he would have gotten another shot, long ago. Well, it's going to be interesting. I think Counsell will do well with the Cubs. I think the Cubs are maybe a couple of players away. I mean, they may lose Bellinger. They'll probably lose Stroman. So that'll be big. They'll have to replace those guys, but I do think the Cubs are close. I think they'll be very good, next year. Obviously, there's a long way to go, right, with free agents and everything like that. But Counsell is a good manager. Now, if you're Bruce Bochy, do you go in and ask for, you got to pay me at least $1 more than this guy,
Oh, yeah. Bruce Bochy's won 4 titles. He hasn't won a playoff series.
I know. I don't suspect he'll do that, but I think he'd be well within his right if he did. I think Bochy probably money isn't that important to him. And I think Bochy now makes, if I read this right, I think he only makes half of what Counsell makes. I mean, Counsell, I think, is $8 million a year, and I think Bochy's like $4 million a year. Joe Torre set the standard there, but nobody came close over the years. Joe Torre was still all these years later the highest paid manager ever. I would have thought Francona would have gotten close to that, but some of these guys, I don't think the money is really that important to him. Dusty Baker, I thought, would have been around that, that area, but Counsell, God bless him, man. He got the money and he got to stay close to home, and he gets a good team, not a great team, but I think the Brewers obviously right now are better, but Cubs potentially could be really good.
Yeah. Well, and I guess like if he's talking, he really wants a new adventure. You're not going to get that. Say San Diego's a very intriguing open position.
It's another opening. Yeah.
But I don't think if he gets into the playoffs, he wouldn't be like, oh wow, he's such a great manager.
No, because they were expected to win. I forgot about that opening. There's quite a bit that are very, very intriguing. I gotta think Buck Showalter, if he doesn't want to retire, should get one of these jobs, I would think, right?
Yeah, I think to me a perfect fit for him would actually be the San Diego job.
Yeah,
because like they have the talent. They just kind of need someone that's a little bit more of like a, not like a player friendly guy, but more of like a hard nosed type of guy. And I feel like Buck would really fit that.
Yeah. Buck turns teams around right away. It's unfortunate that what happened here in this second year. All right, we'll keep an eye on baseball. A lot to talk about over these coming weeks with awards coming up and stuff like that, and with all these managers. Let's jump into the NFL. And you had posed a question of who we think are the best teams in the NFC and the AFC. I'll go first with the AFC, and then we'll hear from you on that, and then I'll jump into the AFC. I think so I'll start with the NFC. I'm sorry. I think the NFC, it's right now. That's an easy one for me. It's the Eagles. I think the Eagles are the best team actually in the NFL right now. I know that the Cowboys, that game wasn't on here in New York because they were showing the Giants and the Raiders, which wasn't interesting at all, unfortunately. But the Eagles, I know the Cowboys had a couple of chances to win that game on Sunday, but the fact is the Eagles won. And, Jalen Hurts has just proven time and time again in these big games, man, he steps up. And, you blink and they're 8-1. And so I just, or 7-1, I think. I just think that the Eagles are above the rest. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, and things changed in the NFL, obviously, and they'll continue to do that, I would have said the 49ers, but I'm not saying that now. I think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. What say you?
I would also say the Eagles, but also give the caveat of right now. I want to pull up their upcoming schedule because it'll be very telling as to where they stand.
Yeah.
So it's load. Here we go. All right, so they have the bye, and then Monday night against the Chiefs. That's going to be fun. And then they got the Bills, the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks.
Oof. Yeah.
So, and I know the Bills have struggled this year and all, but still, that's 5 really tough games back to back. And
no doubt. Yeah.
And if they can come out of there and still only have, say, 2 losses or 3 losses, then I think you can really make a good case for them. But you also look at their schedule so far. They haven't faced like a ton of amazing teams. Like the Cowboys are good. They faced the Vikings, the Bucks, the Rams, and they lost to the Jets. Also demolished the Dolphins. So
yeah. Okay. All right. So we're on the same page with the Eagles. That schedule coming up is brutal for them, but I think they will come out of it in good shape. I really do. I like the Eagles a lot. I think that they're hard-nosed, they're tough. It seems like they win games differently, if that makes sense. Sometimes their games, their defense steps up. Sometimes it's just all Jalen Hurts. Sometimes he reminds me of Mahomes. I'm not putting him in his category yet, but and he's got a big arm still. I really like that team. The AFC was a little more difficult for me, and I guess if I have to pick one right now, I gotta go Ravens. And I'm skeptical with the Ravens because it seems like we've seen this movie before with them that they have this great first half, but the way they beat the Lions and then the way they just stomped on the Seahawks have been better than I predicted. It makes me feel like the Ravens might be the team in the AFC. Now it's a big game Sunday with the Browns, right, at Baltimore. We'll get to the upcoming games in a few, but I wanted to say the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs are still 7-2, but I think that the Chiefs just haven't looked as solid as the Ravens had. But the team that, if I want to say these last couple of games, the way they beat the 49ers and the way they beat the Bills, the Bengals, I could say, but the Bengals are 5-3 and the Ravens are 7-2. So I'm going to give my edge to the Ravens right now.
Yeah, it's really tough because something seems off with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just he doesn't have great receivers. Also, when Taylor Swift has not been at the game, Travis Kelce's been awful. But I have
Taylor
up
Swift,
here.
I never heard of her. Who is that? No, I'm just kidding, guys.
But when you look at yards per game, Browns are number 1. They've been spectacular.
Yeah.
Ravens are number 2. Chiefs are number 4. So I think just based on that, I would give them the edge. Kind of like what you said, though, with the Ravens, it's hard because I feel like they've had really good regular seasons, but then when push comes to shove in the playoffs, Lamar Jackson's either hurt or struggles or whatever. We've seen Mahomes. We've seen this story with him before.
Yeah.
I think kind of in the same way that the Eagles will have a big test. I think if the Chiefs take care of the Eagles in a couple weeks, Monday Night Football, I think that'll be huge.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Something is off with Mahomes. I don't know if it's a injury that he's hiding. I know he was sick. He had the flu or something a few weeks back. There's something off. They don't look as sharp as they normally will. Listen, they're still 7-2 though, right? So I mean, and they're still, such a great team. And they beat a really good team with the Dolphins. And so, but the Ravens, I mean, the way they beat these very good teams over these last few weeks has caused me to say maybe they got something long term here, and Lamar Jackson now not worried about his contract, which was an issue the last few years, and maybe his focus is finally just on being. We know he can be a great player, and I mean, and the funny part is that he's playing very good. It's their defense that's been, so good again that has really stopped these teams. All right. The other thing that you asked for us to talk about, this is painful. The Jets and Giants. How are we feeling right now about both of them? I want to give you a lot of credit because in the beginning of the year when the Giants were struggling, you said that, hey, let's start to look at Caleb Williams and there's some really good quarterbacks coming out. And I'm like, you just signed your quarterback to a big contract, for a few more years. They're going to stick with him. But I have to tell you, there's a lot of, when I say a lot, a couple of writers that really follow the Giants a lot here that kind of know the scoop that are saying that the Giants are very, very open to looking at a quarterback in the draft, this coming year. That surprised me because I thought they were all in on Daniel Jones. Now, listen, he can't help it that he got hurt twice, right? But I think I know the answer to this. I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you think he's the guy when healthy to continue to lead this team?
No,
Okay.
not anymore.
Okay.
I was more on board last year. Even after they lost badly to the Eagles in the playoffs, I was more on it. But this year, he hasn't looked good, even when he's been healthy. Perfect example. Well, I guess that wasn't him, but this offense just hasn't done anything. And part of that is he doesn't have the weapons. Say, if he was on Miami, that might look a little different. Or, I don't know, maybe Kansas City doesn't have great weapons. Baltimore, Philadelphia, Dallas, some of the teams with San Francisco, some great weapons. But when they rely too much on him, it doesn't seem like he's been able to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And in the NFL, if you double down on a quarterback mistake, you're stuck for years. I look at Arizona when they drafted, what was his name? The guy that they ended up the year before Kyler Murray. They drafted 2 quarterbacks with their first round pick. They realized it was a mistake, and I can't even think of his name because he's out of the league.
I know. First name was Josh. I remember I kept confusing him with Josh Allen.
Josh Rosen, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So you need a top quarterback, and especially in a year where there's a lot of really good college quarterbacks coming out. Right now, the Giants would have the 4th overall pick. And speaking of the Cardinals, Kyler Murray is supposed to be playing either this upcoming week or next week.
Yeah.
So, at this point, you could be looking at, and even if they finish ahead of them, they have a lot more money owed to Kyler than the Giants did for Daniel Jones. So they probably aren't going to draft a quarterback.
No.
But I think at this point, you got to take your shot with the quarterback.
Yeah.
And even if that means like you draft Caleb Williams and he doesn't play next year and he just sits behind Daniel Jones,
Yeah.
but I can also see that being a very quick shift. After next year, I believe they could move off of Daniel Jones without it being too big of a cap hit.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of I'm down on the Giants coaching staff overall because I like that they had gotten Tyrod Taylor, right? I always think that you should have a really competent backup. You can't help it that he gets hurt. But how is it that Tommy DeVito can't throw passes? I don't get it. How is he not prepared to throw? I mean, hopefully now he has a full week. We know he's going to be the starter this week, and they didn't go out and pick anybody up. They did pick up Matt Barkley, I believe, right? But he also hasn't played in a long time. He was an old USC quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I want to ask you, and the Giants typically don't do business like this. Are you though down on their head coach? So same thing I'll ask with Daniel Jones. Is Daboll the coach to lead them going forward?
I think he can be.
Okay.
I would give him until the end of next year. Because like this year, it's a lost cause. No matter who you have out there, you're always going to be at a quarterback deficit. But regardless of who is the starter week 1 next year, if they have another year like this where they're winning maybe 4 games, then totally different story.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You're enormously disappointed with the Giants, but you were like the first 2 games you were done. You were like, and you know this team better than anybody, so I think you saw something that a lot of people didn't see, that there was something really off. I'm stunned because of the year they had last year. I'm just shocked that they didn't come out much better, this year. And I know Barkley, Saquon, yeah, Barkley got hurt early. But I've been stunned, and I've been stunned after these injuries that, and listen, I can't ask that most third string quarterbacks are going to come in and do well. That typically doesn't happen, but I haven't seen third string quarterbacks that can't pass or won't pass, or unprepared to pass. But again, I think we'll see that this week. Let's get to the Jets. I'll give my take real quick. It was an awful game on Monday night. I was so disappointed because the Chargers are a good team. You and I have talked about them for the last few years. They're a head scratching team because they could be, I mean, I don't know anybody that has a better arm in the NFL than their quarterback. Herbert, when he throws like towards the sidelines or up the, I mean, he's got just a cannon. And he also has good receivers. And they've got an unbelievable defense well, I shouldn't say unbelievable, but they've got a couple of stars on their defense, with Bosa and a few others, but they're just crazy inconsistent. And they didn't play all that great, on Monday night. And I mean, the Jets defense still played pretty good, I thought, but I don't know what to say about Zach Wilson anymore. I mean, I've tried to give the benefit of the doubt, but I'm really, really disappointed the last few weeks. I listened to Jets. All that being said, they're 4-4, so they could be right in the mix. They could turn this around. I don't really want to see Aaron Rodgers take a chance, honestly, and come back and get hurt again. I mean, this injury always takes at least a year to come back from. And listen, maybe he's healed a little differently, but he's 39 years old. He's not 29 and having this injury. You know what I mean? So I'd rather have him healthy and ready for next year than to sacrifice him for this year. But I've just been disappointed. I don't have really any answers for the Jets. It's really the quarterback play because the defense is still playing well. Their running backs are fine. Dalvin Cook has been a major disappointment, but they really haven't played him much. But Breece Hall has been great. It really falls on the quarterback. He had a tough time getting out of the pocket, this past week, and you saw what happened. I mean, he got sacked a million times. It seems like I think it was 8 times. that he got sacked. What's your thoughts on the Jets?
Yeah, they're still a really hard team to make out right now. Also that final wild card is so interesting. I texted you this before, but
Yeah.
the entire AFC North currently would be in the playoffs, and they're all 2 games above 500. Now, obviously, that's going to change a little bit because you got your head-to-head matchups and everything like that. But I don't know. The Aaron Rodgers thing is going to be very interesting
Yeah.
because it is one thing to be able to throw in practice, no contact, no pads, and everything. Like if you're talking full-fledged contact, and also like you're recovering from an Achilles injury. If you re-injure that, then you're probably done,
Yeah.
especially at his age. But maybe that's kind of what he wants. Like if he comes back heroically, he comes in for a couple snaps, but then like he gets hurt again, then people will be like, oh, well, you tried. But if he had just waited until next season, then maybe you could try it a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, did he not remember what happened with Kevin Durant? I mean,
Right.
I just it's and I get it. Listen, he was so anxious to play. I mean, I think we're seeing a little bit of a different Aaron Rodgers, right? He's not the brooding, type leader here. All of the Jets seem to really love him and look up to him. And maybe that was he just needed to get out of Green Bay. Maybe this is the true guy that we're seeing. I get all that. We're paying him a lot of money and we traded a lot to get him. I get it. It's not his, but the fan knows it's not his fault that he got hurt. That happens. Stay out for now. Let's let this season play out. Zach Wilson, I don't know what to say, with him. I don't know. So disappointing, I think is the word for me with both teams. I got to say, even though I'm a Jets fan, I'm honestly more disappointed in the Giants this year because I really thought the Giants was going to be a fun team to watch. And I thought they were going to build on last year, once Rodgers went down, my expectations did go down with the Jets. I thought that they'd be a little bit better than they are right now, but Wilson hasn't even been a good caretaker these last couple of games. Let's go around and see our segment. What will you be watching on Sunday? So there's some really good matchups this week. Oh, here was the last thing I was going to say. Because also all of the national networks thought that the Giants and Jets would be really good. They're on national TV like every week. The Sunday night game is the Jets and the Raiders, so.
Oh, wow. What a legendary matchup that is.
Yeah. I mean, because they probably thought the Raiders were going to be good as well, and I think it's too early to flex those games out. NBC is probably like, can we flex this out? But boy, oh boy, Troy Aikman was so hard, rightly so, on Zach Wilson through Monday night's game. Chris Collinsworth is going to destroy him on national television if he plays the same way he did Monday night. All right, 1:00. I've got 2, man, for you that I think are great matchups. One, we already discussed, Browns at the Ravens. And the second, to me, at 1:00, the Niners at Jacksonville. I think that is just extremely interesting matchup. The Niners got to get back on track now. Jacksonville's just been one of those under the radar. They're 6-2. They're building on last year. What are you watching at 1:00 on Sunday?
Well, I mean, I'll have the Browns and the Ravens too, which ironically is a Fox game. Usually that's your hardcore CBS game, but
yeah, that's an AFC matchup. That's weird. Yeah.
But I think one of the more underrated ones, because especially after what he did last week, how's about the Texans and the Bengals?
Yeah.
CJ Stroud, man.
Yeah.
He had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. So if we rewind back to our preview, who did I say would be surprising this year?
You did say the Texans.
And I said because of this guy. This guy's special, man. He's going to be a big-time NFL quarterback, But anyway, not to toot my own horn. So the Texans are playing who again this week?
Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
wow.
Okay.
If they win, they would be 5-4 and have the tiebreaker over the Bengals, who would also be 5-4.
Okay. Wow. All right. Okay. How about at 4 o'clock? I have that the Lions at the Chargers, I think is a very, very interesting matchup. But we'll probably see the Giants at Dallas. I think that'll be the only game on here in New York at 4 o'clock. But I'd love to see Lions at Chargers. What I think there's only 3 games, I think, at 4 o'clock, right? 4:05, and then I think there's 2 at 4:25. I think the Rams are playing somebody. I'm forgetting who. I don't have it in front of me, but what are you watching?
Rams are on a bye.
Oh, the Rams are on a bye. Okay. Who are you watching late?
Nobody.
Nobody.
No. I do think the Lions and the Chargers is a really good matchup, though.
Okay.
Because especially like the Lions after, I mean, they got destroyed by Baltimore. You kind of mentioned that before, but if they can put a beating on the Chargers, that could be very interesting. And also, the Chargers are still kind of on life support. I know they've hit 500, which is huge for them. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, division is really still far out of reach. The Chiefs are, they already have the tiebreaker over them and all. But
Yeah.
I don't know. The Chargers, like, the head coach is fighting for his job, probably.
They changed coaches too quick there too, though. The Chargers, they need to give him a little bit more time, even though. But they've been disappointing. But it definitely didn't start with him. And I guess Jets in Vegas will be what it is. Monday night is Denver at Buffalo. The Bills need to get on track here, and Denver's played a lot better the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Where do you want to go? Let's go NBA, and then we'll come back to Michigan, and we'll end with that, and then some inspiration. You asked, what am I thinking about the Knicks right now? But first, I want to say, I know it's early. The Memphis Grizzlies are 1-6.
Yep.
I think I said that they would be the most disappointing team in the NBA this year. Listen, I mean, Brooks meant a lot to that team too. Brooks is not a very likable guy, right? But obviously, without Ja, that team's going to be hurting. Marcus Smart is such a good player, but he was a perfect fit for the Celtics. It's going to take him a while before he's a perfect fit there. And listen, we love Derrick Rose, but I'm sorry, he's a little past his prime. So that's something to watch. They're just 1-6. And remember, the NBA, man, it takes a while to make that up. So your question was, what do we think about the Knicks on a scale of 1 to 10? I'll go first, and I've watched, I think, all 7 games, or at least good parts of them, and I love what they did in the second half on Monday against the Clippers. That team's got Tyronn Lue's got his hands full with that team a little bit, but I would rate the Knicks right now a 5, and I think that there's a long way to go with them. They're 3-4. I thought they could and should have won that game against the Bucks. Their offense is not as fluid as it was at a lot of points last year, particularly like the last 20 games plus the playoffs. I'm not sure what that's about yet, because it's mostly the same players. Dante has been really good. I don't see, so it's weird because I don't see one player slumping a lot. Julius has gotten off to a little slow start, but he had a great game the other night. But outside of that, they're all just playing okay. Jalen had a big night also the other night, but I don't know. I just see them playing right now okay. And I don't see that total fire consistently just yet. I think the Knicks can beat a lot of teams in the NBA if they are consistent night in and night out. Like I said, I think the next step for them is 50 wins this year. And I do think that they can get there. But you and I said it's important that they, come out of these first 10 games and they're not like 3-7 or something like that. And I don't think they will be. But I don't want them to be 5-5 either. I think, 6-4 would be good coming out of these first 10 games. So I'm going to give them right now a 5. I think that the Knicks still have a lot of potential. I don't think they played up to it just yet. They have in spurts. Like I said, second half with the Clippers was that should be them. I will say I am ecstatic how Mitchell Robinson is playing, so far. He's been, I think, their most consistent guy so far. And it's so funny what competition will do for you, because Hartenstein has played so well, and he was obviously taking a lot of minutes from Mitchell. So I think that's gotten Robinson fired back up, but he just seems to be in the right place at the right time. So I'm going to say a 5.
I was going to go with the 5 as well.
Yeah.
I haven't watched every game, but I have tuned in a few. I don't know if you want to give a little bit of time later for the lovely in-season tournament, which is weird, but whatever.
Yeah, why is it?
like-
Why? Well, let me ask you before you jump back in, and because we can do this quick and then come back to it. Why is it not like consecutive? Because like the Knicks have only played one, right, in season tournament game. I thought it was going to be like all of the games now until whenever, but they're like, I don't understand it.
They're like every Tuesday and Friday for like the next month. And then
gotcha. Okay.
After they do the pool play, then they go to like the one elimination, and I'm like the semifinals and the championship game don't count towards the regular season.
Okay.
And those take place in Vegas like the second week of December or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. It's weird, but I guess it's all just a process here.
Yeah.
I feel like kind of like what you said. I think the Knicks can beat basically almost every team on any given night.
Yeah.
The Celtics, it's still challenging, I would say. The Bucks, it's still challenging. Denver, I don't know, because Denver is really good.
7-1 already. Denver is, yeah.
Yeah, they about to hit like dynasty level like overnight, it seems like.
Yeah.
So like I think there are still a few teams that they're kind of behind, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem like at times last year, Jalen Brunson, it was like you're not stopping him for like a week. Same with Julius Randle at times, but it just doesn't seem like they've hit it. Maybe part of that is just kind of shaking cobwebs off a little bit, and we're still that early in the season.
Yeah.
And I do agree. I don't think this team is going to start like the 7-10 that we've been talking. But also, you don't want to get too far away from the pack. I still think you got the Bucks, the Celtics. Also, the Sixers have gotten off to a better start than I thought. I think not having James Harden is really, really helping them.
Yeah. They picked up good players as well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think out of that cluster there, you're Miami, if you want to count Brooklyn in there, Cleveland, Atlanta, maybe the Pacers,
right,
Toronto. Like out of those teams, I think if the Knicks really want to take that next level, they have to show that they can beat any of those teams that I just mentioned on any given day.
Yeah.
Like it's harder to say out west because like I don't know, Golden State, you still got Steph Curry there. The Lakers, any given night, LeBron can pop off for a crazy triple-double. Anthony Davis, if he decides to play, can also do well. But I think beating the Clippers was big. I know James Harden, his first game there, and there's that weird chemistry, but like they're still a good team. Kawhi Leonard's still Kawhi. Like, he's not Kawhi of like 2013, but he's still really good.
Yeah.
So like I think part of me says we got to give it more time, but right now I'd say a 5.
Okay.
I think they're doing okay.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Let me get your take on tonight. In the Garden, I wish I was there. Victor Wembanyama makes his debut against the Knicks. Not his debut in the NBA, and he's been great for the first 7 games or so. I think they're 2-4 or 2-5, something like that. San Antonio,
3-4.
They're 3-4. Okay. But he scored 38 points one night, which was faster than LeBron. I think LeBron, it was like game 50 that he scored 38 or something like that, which was his high. So Garden will be rocking tonight. What are you looking for tonight?
I'm nervous because like it seems like a lot of these. I mean, it seems like everyone has a great game at the Garden, especially
Yeah.
you're talking like a young phenom that loves the spotlight.
Yep.
Like, would I be that surprised if he goes 40-10 with 3 or 4 blocks? No, not at all.
No, don't say that.
Um,
40 points.
but also like you could tell the difference that one player can make. Like he's made
Oh yeah.
such a difference.
Yeah.
San Antonio was dreadful last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awful. And I mean, I know Popovich is a great coach, but like we'll see what happens though. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I can't wait to watch that tonight. I think he's definitely a special player, without a doubt. All right, hey, let's jump over to Michigan. And I think the last I read, Ken, might have read this yesterday, that the NCAA has concluded their investigation. The assistant coach, got fired. I don't think they had a choice there. And now it's going to be in the hands of the Big Ten as well as Michigan as to what, if any, action that they take right now. Now, in the time being, Michigan is in the top 4 in the last poll, right? They're having a great year. But there's just this cloud, man, over it. I was watching, I got to see Point of Interruption yesterday, and Mike Wilbon said something extremely interesting because it may have been the opposite way, but either way, one of them felt the same way I did in terms of Jim Harbaugh had to know about this, right? And then I think it was Wilbon that brought up, he said, but there could be plausible deniability, which was a word I heard in my management career over the years, and I never liked that, and I never kind of understood that because I always felt when something happened in my district, even though I didn't know about that it was going on, I still felt accountable for it. Does that make sense? I felt like, hey, this is still my responsibility. Whereas that Jim Harbaugh's attitude right now is like, I had nothing to do with this. I didn't know anything about it. And it's possible he didn't. It's possible that the assistant coaches all said, just not let this get to the boss. And maybe they said that for one of two reasons, right? He would say, hey, let's not do this. Or he would say, oh my gosh, man, now I know about this. I mean, I could lose my job, but keep doing it. Yeah, so it's one of those two things, and it's hard for us to tell. How are you seeing this play out now?
I don't know. I think because I've seen a few people kind of reacting to it. Because apparently now the only thing that's probably going to happen that could potentially happen before the end of the season is the Big Ten stepping in and suspending him. But a lot of people are saying that they shouldn't because it would hurt the Big Ten brand. So I mentioned this before, like right now, is it very possible to have Ohio State and Michigan in the college football championship game?
Yeah.
Like that would be it's very plausible.
Yeah.
And it would also be excellent for the brand of the Big Ten. And because of that, I feel like what's going to end up happening is they're going to kind of sit on it until after the playoffs or after Michigan gets eliminated.
Yeah.
I do think Harbaugh, I think, is going to end up getting suspended for it. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh is looking at hopping back to the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's usually 4 or 5 head coaching spots available.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, the Raiders is already kind of already an option there.
Yeah.
If the Jets start to tank, Robert Saleh might be gone.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if Harbaugh is there, although I don't know if him and Aaron Rodgers would be a great fit. But like, I feel like there's a lot of different options for him, so I could see him jumping ship to the NFL. Also, something I had seen is that apparently they went as far as telling Michigan, or like framing it so that Michigan seemed like they were going to like that people were stealing their signs too. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, yeah. That was something else that was mentioned on another thing that I saw. That actually sign stealing is pretty it's common, and especially more in college than in the NFL. I guess, I mean, that's fine. I mean, sign stealing now, look how baseball went through a lot of lengths, to not have signs stolen, right? With and the catcher doesn't put down 1 and 2 fingers anymore, right? But the NFL has been a long time. Quarterbacks have, the radio inside their helmet. So I don't, I guess some defensive signals are still like hand signals and stuff like that. And I think that's a little antiquated with the technology that we have. But I don't know how to feel about that. I think though, I'm not sure that there's many programs though that brought tickets and stood on somebody else's sideline and brought tickets and sent people to 35 different, games over the last couple of years. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this, to be honest.
Yeah, and I guess that's the other thing too. It's like, I mean, you're talking about a low-level head coach or a low-level coaching
Yeah.
staff person.
Yeah.
And like tickets for college games aren't cheap. And
No.
you're buying like 35 of them. Where is he coming up with like the 3 or 4 grand to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And then he's flying people all over the place. He's paying for the airfare, and then I'm sure they're getting some money to film stuff. And that's pretty elaborate. I don't, I could see if you're scouting the team that you're playing next week, the week before, or something like that. And, maybe all these signs are pretty obvious that they're doing that. Well, then shame on the team that's giving the signs if they're really obvious. But how about you just get better than the team that you're playing and just outplay them? You know what I mean? And you want to I mean, if during the game you happen to steal a sign or two, I mean, so be it. It happens, I'm sure it happens, but to do this elaborate stuff, I'm sure that most teams don't do what they did. Listen, I think I'm with you. I think Harbaugh is going to wind up maybe a coach of the Bears where he played at in most of his NFL career, or I think that's what he'll do. He never seemed like a guy. I'm surprised he stayed at Michigan as long as he has. And I like that there's been stability, and I like the Michigan program and the brand, and how they position themselves to be right back in, the playoffs again this year. But this is going to hover over them, Kenny. That's the thing. People.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not going to go away. And even if they, let's say they suspend him, which they won't. I don't think they will. Let's just say hey, you're suspended for the rest of the season, including, playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen. But even if they did that, this would still hover over them, and what if they win the national championship, which is not out of the realm of possibilities? They're a very good team. Then what? It's like, oh, they won the champ by cheating or whatever. How long did Deflategate and Spygate and all this stuff hang over the Patriots, for years, right? Or the Astros,
I was just gonna say the same thing. Like,
yeah.
people were still talking about it.
Yeah.
I'll give another example. Nelson Cruz retired
Yes.
last week. And one of the things people were saying as well, like, what do you remember him for? And like, very good player, borderline Hall of Famer. But the first thing that came up was he was part of the biogenesis thing back in like 2013 or whatever it was.
A while ago too. That's right. That's a long time. And he had a lot of home runs in his career, That's true. It's a shame. It really is. And it's more a shame for the players who are playing their butts off. And I'm sure they're like, why do we need to steal sign? We're better than most of these teams. You know what I mean? The only few teams that they're probably not better than is Ohio State or Georgia, Florida State, some of these other ones. But that's, we'll see how that plays out. But I don't think this is going to end well. I think it's going to hover over them, and I think that Harbaugh, whether he gets suspended or not, I don't need this college stuff anymore. and someone in the NFL will hire him. There's no doubt. He's a very good coach.
Yeah. Yeah, he wouldn't be on the market for very long. The Bears
No.
would be interesting because more than
Yeah.
likely, I'm assuming they're not bringing Justin Fields. Probably isn't going to be the starting quarterback next year,
Boy,
or if he is, they're probably going to draft a quarterback. So,
boy, oh boy, they it seems like every quarterback they draft. When was the last time they had a really good quarterback? It's been a
the
long time.
50s.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Oh boy. All right, you ready for some inspiration?
Let's do it.
All right, I got a different one for you today. Let me take out my notes because I want to read this word for word. Because a few weeks ago you asked me, was there ever a tie for the MVP award? And I told you it's 1979. Willie Stargell and my very own Keith Hernandez. Well, when Hernandez was with the Cardinals, they tied for the MVP. Did you know that there's been one time in history that there was a tie for the Cy Young Award?
Oh,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
1969, believe it or not, this was still the pitcher era, of course. But the Tigers, Denny McLain. Now, Denny McLain won it unanimously the year before, in 1968. That was the year he won 31 games. We're never seeing that in our lifetime, Ken.
No.
So it was 31 games in 1 year. But Denny McLain was 24-9 the next year in 1969 with a 2.80 ERA. And Orioles pitcher Mike Cuellar was 23-11, and he had a 2.38 ERA. And so each of them, and obviously there were less sports writers then voting, each of them received 10 first place votes. And so the results for the first time, and then the last time, it ended in a tie. Now, there were 23 other voters. There are 23 voters. So the other 3 first place votes went to Jim Perry, Gaylord Perry's brother, who was with the Minnesota Twins at the time. And he was 20-6. So you had all these 20-game winners. But reading a little bit more about this, Denny McLain and Mike Cuellar finished dead even. First time in history. McLain won the 1968 Cy Young Award, winning 31 games and pitching the Tigers to the 1968 World Series. Now, by the way, he also wasn't very good in the World Series. Mickey Lolich was, but he did. It was because of him that they got there. And he said this: "You are definitely better if you win more ball games, but I think I was just as good a pitcher this year when he won 24." McLain said when notified of his award, he said, "I knew the hitters better this year, and I pitched almost as many innings. My earned run average was a little higher, but everybody else's was this year due to the lowering of the mound. Winning the award this year is definitely more satisfying than it was last year due to the fact that I didn't win as many games." But he also added, "I didn't think I could win it due to the fact that the club that won the pennant that had my Cuellar sewed it all up." But the voters looked a little past that and felt like he had said that even though he won 31 games the year before, that he had just as good a year in the next year. Mike Cuellar was spectacular. Mike Cuellar actually won game 1 of the World Series that year against the Mets. I think he held them to 1 run. I think it was 4-1 was the final of that game. And obviously the Mets won the next 4 to win that World Series. But Cuellar was a great pitcher. So was McLain. McLain was a very short period of time. It was just those couple of years and maybe 1 or 2 others. And he flamed out. He had a lot of arm issues, and he had a lot of alcohol issues and stuff like that. Cuellar was good for a long time. So anyway, that's my inspiration. The only time that there was a tie for the Cy Young Award, 1969, Denny McLain and Mike Cuellar.
Wow. Fun fact here. I just looked this up. Do you want to take a guess since 2020? Obviously 2020 doesn't count. How many 20-game winners there were in all of baseball?
Last year?
The last 3 years. So
last
21,
years.
22, 23.
I don't think there's been any.
We've had 3.
Oh, there has been 3. Okay.
1 each year. Urias in 21.
Right.
Kyle Wright for the Braves, last
yeah.
year. And Spencer Strider also won, I think it was 21 games this year.
Strider, I should have known that. Yeah, he won 21 games this year. Wow.
So,
yeah, it used to be common to have several 20-game winners every year,
Yeah. I was about to say there was 3 back in 1969. So I just think, or at least 3.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. So my inspiration comes from actually the podcast I sent you.
Yes.
It was a story that I think is very interesting. It's a guy, Vernon Fox III. I don't know if you know him. He went as an undrafted free agent. Oh, was it the 49ers? I don't remember. He talks about it in the podcast though. And just kind of hearing his story to me was really inspiring. Because he had started out as he was in college. Well, first of all, in order to get to a college that he was hoping to get into, he had to send his tape out because at first his coaches weren't going to. But one coach believed in him and he sent it out to like 30 or so. And he got offers from every single one that he sent it to. Or I don't think it was 30, I think it was 8. But either way, got accepted to all of them. So he went to a college and he wasn't projected to do that well. But like he continued to work hard and was projected to be like about a 4th round pick. Phone never answers. But then eventually he gets signed as an undrafted free agent with either the Niners or I think it might have been the Chargers though. So he's like the 7th string or whatever in training camp. Only gets like a couple reps during like each of the practices, but continues to show his knowledge of the game. And due to like a couple of key injuries, by week 2, he's starting on, I want to say defensive back or something like that. But like he gets all the way to starting and like has a pretty decent career, ends up as an 8-year veteran and does like pretty well. And kind of through the whole story, he knew that God had called him to do this for whatever season that may look like. And you have to listen to the podcast because I'm probably not going to be able to do it justice, but just his story and the progression of everything that he went through, all of the struggles, all of just the different things that he had to continue to pursue in order to become not just a successful NFL player, but afterwards he was coach for about 5 or 6 years and did really well with that. A team that never made it to the state championship. He won it, I think, twice without any prior coaching experience.
Wow.
Just really like seeing him being guided by what God had for him and how important it is to just say like, I'm going to follow what God has called me to do until he calls me to something else. So,
wow. I haven't listened to the podcast yet. Say the name of it so that everybody will know.
Yeah, it's called The Basement. The title of it is God is Not Petty, Your Purpose, Hearing His Voice, How to Heal.
Okay.
It's a good podcast. It's long too. It's like 2.5 hours, something like that, but definitely worth listening.
Okay. Awesome. That's great inspiration. I can't wait to listen to that. All right there, son. We got a lot to talk about next week, I'm sure. And I think we have an interview or two lined up in the next week or so. So go ahead and take us home.
Yeah, this is Kenny Squared N.
Kenny.
With Sports on a Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely.